In 2014, just last spring, the American Statistical Association warned that value-added methods should not be used to rate individual teachers. This is the American Statistical Association. It said that the teacher is responsible for about 1 to 14% of the variance in test scores. 1 to 14%. What matters more, they said, is the student's home life, the student's motivation, and countless other factors. The American Statistical Association warned that use of VAM to rate teachers might have unintended consequences that reduce the quality of education. I believe they were referring to narrowing the curriculum to only what is tested, to cheating and teaching to the test. To the extent that VAM is used to fire teachers, teachers will be incentivized to spend weeks and weeks on test prep and thus reduce the time available for the arts, foreign languages, history, physical education, and other non-tested subjects. They have to. Their jobs depend on it. Mr. Reformer says, your answer proves that you're unwilling to evaluate teachers at all. You're just defending the status quo. And I replied, no, not at all. I don't like the status quo. I reject the status quo of high-stakes testing and privatization. You are defending the status quo. I'm not. The U.S. Department of Education and the states and the Gates Foundation have now spent hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly billions of dollars, trying to make VAM work, and it doesn't work. It hasn't worked anywhere. In many states, teachers are given a rating based on the scores of students they never taught. Can you imagine? If you're an art teacher and you're being judged by the math scores of the kids in your school? This is simply wrong. In Florida, where teachers brought a suit against this, and they said, we haven't taught these kids, how can we be judged? The judge said, well, it may not be fair, but it's not illegal or unconstitutional. There are 2 points that I would make about the charter movement, and I could devote an entire evening to discussing the charter movement, but I'll make it brief. First of all, we now know, based on 25 years of evidence, that charters do not get higher test scores than public schools on average. In fact, in state after state, they typically get lower scores than public schools, and most of the lowest performing states in schools with large numbers of charters are charter schools, not public schools. The charter schools that do get high test scores are known for high rates of attrition and for counseling out students with low test scores and not accepting students who are English language learners, are not as many as those of the neighborhood public schools, and not accepting students with serious disabilities. So the public schools find themselves in financial distress as charter schools lure away the most motivated students with promises that they may or not be able to keep, and as public schools also enroll the most expensive and challenging students to educate at far higher proportions than charter schools. Secondly, the charter sector in many states has become an industry, a business that attracts entrepreneurs who know nothing about education but want to make money. They look at the public education budget of hundreds of billions of dollars and they want a piece of the action. There have been scores of charter school scandals of for-profit charters taking 20% or more of the revenues just to pay off their investors or to pocket in their own bank account, of charters buying the building, then leasing it back to themselves and charging the state outrageous rentals, of charters opened by sports stars and celebrities who are high school dropouts, of charters that collect millions from the state and run very low-performing schools but are immune from accountability because of their campaign contributions. Now, the original promise of charters, and I was there in the beginning, in 1990, the original promise was that charters would get flexibility and freedom in exchange for accountability, and yet we see in many states there's no accountability for charters that are politically connected. It's true in Pennsylvania, it's true in Ohio, it's true in Michigan, it's true in Arizona, it's true in many other states. There are some good charters, to be sure, charters that do what charters were originally supposed to do, which was to take the most troubled students, the most difficult students, the students who had dropped out, the students who needed the most help. But the very idea of charters for regular students or high-performing students raises questions that we have to consider very carefully. Charters foster segregation. Charters divide communities. Charters are undermining our public school system. No high-performing nation has charters or vouchers. They have a unitary public school system, and they constantly try to improve it. Democracy is ruled by the people, not ruled by elites, not ruled by corporations. The public schools are the people's schools. Their doors are open to all. You don't need to win a lottery to enter. Public education must be, as we once hoped, a bastion of equal educational opportunity. Public education is a public trust. It is not a business opportunity. Protecting our public schools against privatization and saving them for future generation of children is the civil rights issue of our time.